Shalom, this is Avraham Shira from Dar Shalom. Welcome to our erev Shabbat talk. Today we're going to learn a story from the Baal Shem Tov, really a mashal, a metaphor for the relationship of Am Yisrael to Shabbat. And the Rebbe, the Holy Tzaddik, tells us that this is like the relationship of a father to his son. And he begins to tell us when a father gives his child something that the child wants very much, the child has pleasure from it. And the father also has pleasure from the giving the child that which he wants. So their sharing of pleasure is a very deep, mystical thing. The child receives the gift or whatever he wanted, a candy bar, a toy, whatever it is. But the father gets the pleasure of giving the item to his son. And so too is the pleasure of God when he gives us the Shabbat. The Torah says that God said to the Jewish people, I have a special gift in my treasure house, and Shabbat Shema, and its name is Shabbat. Shabbat is a gift. Now, it's a very interesting idea if you think about it. Shabbat is a time when we're not supposed to work, we're not supposed to go traveling, we're not supposed to do a lot of things, except meet with our families and friends and learn Torah and pray and meditate and eat and drink and sing and perhaps dance a little. Shabbat is a time of pleasure. However, to create the atmosphere of that pleasure, we have to stop the outside world, at least for a little while. So stopping the outside world is really the main gift of Shabbat. God is saying, I give you permission not to work. I give you permission to take it easy. I give you permission to trust me enough not to keep chasing that holy dollar. I give you permission to not answer your cell phone, to not jump in the car and head into 6 lanes of traffic. Shabbat is a very interesting gift because it's really a list of limitations. And yet, by following the limitations of Shabbat, we receive this tremendous inner gift. So it's kind of a counterintuitive thing. Usually we think of a gift as something tangible that I can give you. I give you a gift. It could be money. It could be an item. But here, the gift is the idea of stopping the weekday and entering a new time and space. So Shabbat is really a place in the mind where we allow ourselves to rest, where I have enough faith that I will be able to make a living next week. I will be able to get the replay of the NBA Finals. I will be able to talk to my friends and associates after Shabbat on Saturday night. So really, the Rebbe tells us this pleasure is a type of pleasure that we don't associate with the physical world. Because all the pleasures of the physical world, and they're real pleasures, let's not fool ourselves. The real pleasures of this world that we see every day, whether it's food or drink or excitement or controversy, is also a pleasurable thing, although not for the people that are enraveled in the controversy, rather there's the people who are watching it. But if you notice, most news seems to revolve around some type of controversy. But all these types of pleasures, when they're over, they're gone. They're done. You could have the best steak in the world, and once you finish swallowing the last bite, try to recreate that pleasure. It won't work. Whereas Shabbat, this time and space transformation, doesn't go away. Because it's a place that happens inside you that's not necessarily connected with the things of this world. So when you create that inner space for the pleasure of being with your family, the pleasure of sharing special and spiritual ideas, sharing experiences that you've had during the week, those moments don't go away when they're over. They keep coming back. How do they come back? Well, through our memory. That when you remember a special day in your life, for example, I remember the day I graduated university. My father came to the graduation ceremony, and Governor Bill Graham was there. And I shook his hand, the governor of Florida. And my father was there. And I know he had pleasure in that moment because I actually got my degree. Now, when I think about that moment now, I get pleasure again. And the pleasure is simply the idea of completing a course, completing a commitment. And I didn't make straight A's or the honor list, at least there. But the pleasure of completion is a real pleasure that you can go back to and sense, I finished my degree. Whereas that $100 dinner of salmon steak, as great as it was, I can't reconjure that pleasure in my mind. And that tells me that the pleasure of the spiritual event, of an emotional event, is higher than the pleasure of this world. So Shabbat says, God says, take a break, and then you can have a higher pleasure. But if I don't take the break, I can't access the higher pleasure. And this is like the father who gives his child this gift. Because we ask, well, how can God, the infinite being, have pleasure when I sit down to make kiddush on a glass of wine, or I eat my wife's homemade challah, or I hear my child sing a song? How does God have pleasure in that? Well, his pleasure is through my pleasure. That just like the father has pleasure when his child gets that new toy and starts playing with it, so too Hashem derives pleasure from our pleasure when it is experienced in this special time and place that we create by actually setting up healthy boundaries with the world. Now, if you haven't experienced this, well, my heart goes out to you, really, because that means you're going at it 7 days a week. And the only time you get a break, well, vacation. I don't know about vacations. A lot of vacations seem to be a lot of work to me. Usually I need a vacation after my vacation from all the work that goes into it. But the idea of Shabbat is stop. No more work, no more TV, no more radio, no more cooking, no more anything that has to make me transform my environment. Because the idea of Shabbat is a self-contained environment. So with those ideas in mind, we can understand why the Jewish people are so stubborn about Shabbat. Because they know if we hold on to Shabbat, then I have a gift that I'm not giving up. I'm not giving up that gift. We all get presents here and there. And, your husband bought you a ring, or your wife bought you a gold watch. It's very nice. But I remember, receiving a ring of my great-grandfather. That was so much more special because it was old and it was in the family. And so too Shabbat is this old gift. It was given 3,500 and some odd years ago. So those gifts that are so old have more weight historically and spiritually, and therefore they're more precious to us. And so we can understand more why we hold on to the Shabbat. Now, if you're non-Jewish and you weren't commanded to keep the Shabbat, what do? Well, the Christian religion has an idea of Shabbat. They call it Sunday. They have Sunday dinner. They go to church. And those ideas are essentially similar ideas to the Jewish idea. Now, who you worship and how you worship and what your theology is not our question here. The ecumenical debate between Christianity and Judaism is not a new story. It is a very, very old story. And it's not a pretty story. And nor is it a story that we really need to remember today in the modern times. Because if we really hold to the ideas of political correctness, or whatever that means, then certainly if we're not allowed to call somebody by the name of their skin color, or then why are we allowed to call them by the name of their religion? That people are people and God is God. And the Creator wants us all to have an intimate relationship with Him. And it's all about building that inner relationship. And one of our great sages in Hasidic philosophy tells us that the souls are like little rays coming off the sun. Now, can you count the number of photons coming out of the sun? Of course not. Not even a question. Every soul is coming out of the sun in its own pathway. There are no two pathways that are the same. But we're all coming from the same sun, the same Creator. So if you have Shabbat because you're Jewish, or you have Shabbat because you're Christian, or you have some kind of Shabbat because you're Islam, or you're Hindu, or you're Buddhist, that's great. But it still has to have certain basic ideas involved. If I answer my phone, it's not Shabbat. If I go driving, it's not Shabbat. Now, when you have a dinner with your family, and you talk about beautiful ideas, and you thank God for the food, and you sing songs, that is Shabbat. So each person has to find his balance and his place in this divine equation. Now, there are a lot of arguments about this issue of Shabbat and how to keep it throughout the thousands of years that the sages of Israel have been arguing the halachic questions of Shabbat. But here at the end of days, after thousands of years of wandering and the Jewish people are coming back to who they are, we're also coming back to Shabbat. And it's not a particularly easy discipline to follow when you have thousands of laws on the books. You know, you have to be a Supreme Court justice to know all the laws of Shabbat. Okay, with that said, but each person starts where he is. And each person takes on what he can and what seems the most important to him at any one time. So whether it's, okay, I'm not going to the mall today because it's Shabbat. Why? Because the mall is about acquisition of goods. And Shabbat is about enjoying the goods. You know, there is a buzz. There is a pleasure when you buy something new in the mall. But that buzz doesn't last long. And, you know, I really like it when I leave the mall and I get back in my car and I'm like, oh, where was I just now? I was in the zone of all the honeybees going after the honey. And there's no peace there. There's no inner peace there. So I take my item home and I go home and I can have pleasure with that new item. Shabbat is the time to enjoy the creation. It's to enjoy our hard work, to enjoy the gifts that the Creator has given us. So I want to bless all of you to contemplate these ideas and think about your relationship to God and how you can create that sacred space in your life. And it has to have a place, and it has to have a time, and it has to have intention. Because the Baal Shem Tov teaches us, the master of the good name, who was a great Kabbalist from about 270 years ago. He said, we need those three things to create an energy sphere. When you have time, place, and intention, you create energy in that sphere. If it's lacking any one of those things, it's not a whole creation. And Shabbat is time, from Friday night to Saturday night, space in your home or wherever you rest, and intention. The intention is to have pleasure with the Creator's creation. Okay, you could say, well, I have pleasure when I turn on National Geographic and I watch all his wonderful animals creations running around Africa. You know, there is pleasure in that until the kill, you know, until they start eating each other. Usually that's when I flip it off. It seems like they're trying to sell me more than pleasure over there. Every single video has to show me the kill. You know, I don't know what that's about. But the point is that we can admire God's creation on YouTube day and night. You know, you can go to the Alps and flip one button and suddenly you're in the Gobi Desert in China. And another button and you're in Hawaii, and another button you're in Antarctica. Wonderful. You just went around the globe in 15 minutes. Why do I need to leave my house? That's also a way of praising the Creator and seeing the wonder of creation. But Shabbat, it's not about those travels. It's about the inner travel, the inner journey into the relationship of truth with myself and with the Creator. And as I said on one of my poems that you can find on our YouTube channel or our Patreon page, how can I know God? How can I face God if I don't face myself? And how can I face myself if I don't face God? So that facing the Creator is a challenge to a lot of us, because it can arouse a lot of feelings we're not really comfortable with. But when we understand over and around all those uncomfortable feelings, there's a tremendous love that's driving this relationship. And the metaphor of this love is that Father's love for his child, that he gets pleasure. Whatever the child does, he gets pleasure. When my grandkid eats, I get pleasure. Why? He's eating. I'm eating. Everybody's eating. So, no, but of course, when a 6-month-old starts to eat, it's a new thing. And he's learning how to partake of creation. And that's another way we can understand the sharing of pleasure on Shabbat. Okay, so with all these things said, I want to bless everyone with a holy Shabbat. Create that holy space within and in your external life, and you'll see wonders. And this coming month in July, we're offering a new series of classes on our patreon.com page, Rabbi Avraham. On our Patreon page, sorry about the interruption, but we're going to be offering a series on reincarnation, which is really an astounding series of classes from the 15th century Kabbalist Rabbi Yitzhak Lurie, the Arizal, and his main student, Rabbi Chaim Vital. And he has a book called The Gates of Reincarnation. And we're going to go through a lot of those chapters and learn some things about why Judaism believes that the soul doesn't die, but it translates and transfers through the generations, seeking perfection. So we're all about that, seeking the perfection of the Creator within ourselves. So look for us on Patreon, and look for us. We'll be continuing doing these little talks on Facebook, and look forward to seeing you more there. And God bless you, and have a great weekend and a great Shabbat. Kol Tuv.